Okay, I'm Dave Smith and teaching a pre-calculus class here at this institution. You don't have to be a student in my institution to watch these videos. Of course, they go out to the public, so the whole world gets to look at them. And sometimes actually, a few hundred people will look at these, and I don't think my students are that busy. I don't think they look at them that often. Well, in any case, these videos are of any benefit to you. Feel free to use them. If you're in my class, you're probably going to want to use them. All right. If I keep looking over here, just because I've got a monitor over here, I really should have one there. So it looks like I'm making eye contact out here. Just pretend the class is out that way, okay? Excuse me. Now, this is a pre-calculus class. In the first class, the first task in this class is going to be to learn to sketch accurate graph shapes for some of the most common functions. Now, hopefully you've had a good Algebra 2 class, because if you haven't, you really haven't had the prerequisites for a pre-calculus class. If you didn't do very well in Algebra 2, we're going to do our best to bring you up to speed, but we're going to study functions. Excuse me, it's allergy season and I'm a little bit hoarse. So, what's a function? You should know at this point, but a lot of people get out of Algebra 2 with a pretty shaky idea of what a function is. Okay, and that's common. Don't worry too much about it. We're going to define it, and we're going to define it in terms of some graphs that we learn to construct. And it's very easy to construct these graphs. You'll have an early test on constructing graphs, and everybody should make 100 on that test, because it's such an easy process if you practice it sufficiently. Some people need more practice than others. Most people don't need that much. All right. Now, I'm not going to explain everything we have here. We're going to get right to how we construct these graphs, but you see, here are a couple of your most fundamental graph shapes. This is a parabola, and we call that the shape of a squaring function. And this is an exponential curve. We can graph these things by hand quickly and with good accuracy. And one of the tasks is to do that. We're not going to rely on a graphing calculator to build our simple graphs or to understand how the graphs move around on the plane. It's not that difficult to understand, and a graphing calculator really bypasses the understanding that we want you to have. Okay, so just to show you how quickly those things can be sketched, I'll sketch the parabola while I'm continuing to talk. I'm not doing a great job of locating these lines. It's not going to matter a whole lot. There it is. You know how to construct the lines. My arm is probably in the way when I did that. That's all the longer it takes to construct a pretty accurate parabola. And then you can use that graph to understand what various parabolic functions might be telling you. Again, something you probably haven't encountered at that point, so you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but just giving you an idea of where we're headed. Little terminology here before we get into how you actually construct this grid that I used to construct this thing. I didn't mark off 10 vertical lines and 10 horizontal lines like you're often taught to do, or a lot of times you're just handed a piece of paper with that information on it. There's nothing wrong with that, but this has advantages, okay? And again, it's going to be easy to learn. Okay, well, a little bit of terminology here before we get into it. These dotted lines here are what we call construction lines, and there's specific rules for locating these construction lines. Vertical goes this way, horizontal goes this way. You have to know those terms. I remember I was confused, up to a pretty advanced age. I think I was in my 60s. No, seriously, most of the way through high school, I didn't know vertical from horizontal. Now, pretty much knocked the top off of the SATs, so I was learning a lot of stuff, but there's little terminology things that get in your way, and that one got in mine a little bit until I said, okay, vertical, horizontal, I've got it. If you graph these functions on a calculator, they're graphed in a window. So this rectangle here is your window. And we've sketched these curves within this window. Okay. We have the boundary lines. This is the left boundary. This is the right boundary of our window. This is the upper edge of our rectangle, or the upper boundary of our window. This is the lower edge of our rectangle. So we can use that kind of terminology. Left edge, right edge, or left boundary, right boundary. Top edge, bottom edge, upper boundary, lower boundary. Okay. So understand that we've got construction lines, and notice that the construction lines extend beyond the window. That's so we can label things out here that are relevant to the graph without messing up our picture. We also extend the boundary lines. Okay, so the boundary lines, little dotted line beyond the edges of the boundary lines in each case, here, 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 and here. So we're going to learn to do this. Incidentally, right now, we're only going to learn 3 shapes. Start with. The rest of the shapes are pretty easy if you learn the first 3. They're no harder, and once you see what's going on, they make a good bit of sense. Here's a different grid. That grid is different than the one you just saw. The construction lines are not all in the same place. Turns out that the vertical construction lines are the same as what you just saw, and I don't expect that you remember what you just saw. Because right now we're just kind of getting a feel for what's going to come up. And then our horizontal lines are different than they were. As a matter of fact, if you were to rotate this thing 90 degrees, it would pretty much look the same. I mean, it'd be a little taller this way, a little narrower this way, but the lines would be located in a very similar way. There's a lot of symmetry. On this graph. Okay, now as far as locating the points and sketching the curves, they're just very simple rules for doing that, and they're very easy to learn. Okay, well, I'm going to take that as an overview, and I'm actually going to stop the video. I'd intended to show you on the same video how we locate these construction lines, but we're going to do that on another video, and we're going to do that by starting with folding strips of paper. So we're going to do that next.